I arrived at the funeral home 20 minutes early. That's what you do when you're family. You arrive early. You greet people. You stand at the front and accept condolences for the person you loved. That's what I thought I'd be doing for my brother, Robert. The parking lot was already half full. Robert had been well-liked in the community, successful businessman, generous with his time and money. I straightened my black dress, checked my purse. The strap felt heavier than usual, and walked toward the entrance. The October air was cold, leaves scattered across the pavement. 3 days since Robert died. 3 days since my world shifted. Inside, the funeral home smelled like lilies and furniture polish. Organ music played softly from hidden speakers. I recognized the hymn, one Robert had hummed while cooking. People clustered in the lobby, speaking in hushed voices. And there, at the entrance to the chapel, stood Lisa and David, Robert's former step-niece and step-nephew. They'd reconnected with him about 3 years ago, after decades of no contact. Lisa wore designer black. David wore a dark suit that looked new. They stood like hosts at a dinner party, greeting arrivals with practiced sympathy. I walked toward them. Lisa saw me first. Her smile tightened. "Margaret," she said. "Not Aunt Margaret, not Maggie, just Margaret. Thank you for coming." As if I were a distant acquaintance, as if I hadn't been Robert's sister for 68 years. An usher appeared at my elbow. Young man, funeral home employee. "Ma'am, right this way." He guided me past Lisa and David, past the front rows with their reserved signs, past the middle section where Robert's friends were settling in, all the way to the back, the last row, against the wall. I sat down slowly. The cushioned pew felt too soft. Around me, people filled in. Neighbors I recognized, business associates, members of Robert's golf club. No one looked back at me. No one waved or nodded. I was invisible. From my seat, I watched the service begin. Lisa and David sat in the front row, center, where I should have been sitting, where Robert's closest family belonged. The pastor spoke about Robert's generosity, his kindness, his faith. Friends stood to share memories. One man mentioned Tuesday dinners at Robert's house. He always had a place set for his sister Maggie. My throat tightened. But Lisa and David didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge me. After the eulogies, people lined up to offer condolences. I watched Lisa lean in to embrace an elderly woman, heard her voice carry back to me. Robert was very clear about his wishes near the end. He wanted to make sure everything was in order. The woman murmured something sympathetic. Lisa nodded. Yes, he updated everything last year, made sure his estate would go to the people who were there for him. My hands gripped the edge of the pew. Updated everything. Last year, when I was still visiting every Tuesday, when he was still thanking me for being there. I looked at the photo displays flanking Robert's casket, dozens of pictures spanning 7 decades. Robert as a child, grinning, gap-toothed. Robert at his college graduation, arm around our parents. Robert and me at countless holidays. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, 4th of July barbecues. Robert at his wedding. Robert after his divorce. Robert and me at his 60th birthday party, his arm around my shoulders, both of us laughing. Picture after picture, year after year. The more recent photos showed Robert alone. Robert with his golf club buddies. Robert at a charity dinner. Not a single photo of Lisa or David. Not one. They'd been absent from his life for decades. But now they sat in the front row, accepting sympathy like they were his real family. The service ended. People filed out slowly. I stayed in my seat, clutching my purse. Inside was a manila envelope. Inside that envelope was a document Robert had given me 8 years ago, after his cancer scare. "Keep this safe, Maggie," he'd said, pressing it into my hands, "just in case." I'd put it in my safe deposit box and tried not to think about why he'd given it to me. Now I understood. Robert had known. He'd known what people were capable of. I stood up finally, smoothing my dress, walked past the photos one more time, stopped at the Thanksgiving picture. The two of us 6 years ago, his favorite yellow roses on the table between us. I touched the frame gently. Then I walked out of that funeral home with my head high and my purse clutched tight against my side. Lisa and David had no idea what was coming. They thought they'd won. They thought Robert's wishes were whatever they said they were. But I had something they didn't know about, something that would change everything, the real will. And I was going to make sure Robert's actual wishes were honored, no matter what it took. I need to tell you about Robert, about who he really was. Not the version Lisa and David presented at that memorial, the real Robert, my big brother for 68 years. I'm Margaret Carter, Maggie to the people who know me. I'm 68 years old, retired from teaching third grade for 35 years. My husband Tom died 5 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, the kind that doesn't give you time to say goodbye. Since then, I've lived alone in the same suburban house we bought in 1982. Split level, 3 bedrooms, garden in back. My life is quiet now. Book club on Tuesdays, garden club on Wednesdays. Coffee with my neighbor Eleanor most mornings. It's a good life. Simple. Or it was until 3 days ago. Robert was 4 years older than me, 72 when he died. We grew up in Ohio, moved to different states for work, but ended up in the same city by pure coincidence in our 40s. After that, we were inseparable. Every Tuesday night we had dinner together, started as his idea after his divorce 15 years ago. He'd gone through a rough separation from Janet, his wife of 20 years. She left him for someone younger. No warning. Just packed up one weekend while he was at a business conference. The divorce was bitter. Janet had 2 kids from her first marriage, Lisa and David. They were adults by then, late 20s. They sided with their mother completely, cut Robert off. Didn't matter that he'd helped raise them, paid for their college, treated them like his own. After the divorce, he never heard from them again. Until 3 years ago. For 42 years, I was there. When Janet left, I helped him through it. Drove him to lawyer appointments when he was too upset to drive himself. Cooked him dinners when he couldn't eat. Listened when he needed to talk. When he got the cancer diagnosis 8 years ago, I took family leave from teaching. Drove him to chemotherapy every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 months. Sat with him while the poison dripped into his veins. Held his hand when he threw up in the car on the way home. When he needed a kidney biopsy, I was his emergency contact. When the bank needed a co-signer for his business expansion loan, I signed. I didn't give him money. He had plenty. I gave him time. Thousands of hours over 42 years. Every Tuesday dinner became sacred. 52 weeks a year times 42 years. Over 2,000 dinners, just the two of us. That was our bond. That's who we were to each other. Then 3 years ago, Lisa showed up, called Robert out of the blue, said she wanted to reconnect. She was going through a divorce herself, bitter one, messy. Her ex-husband had left her with significant debt. She seemed genuinely remorseful about the years of silence. Robert, being Robert, forgave her immediately, started inviting her to things. She brought David along eventually. He'd lost his engineering job during the pandemic, was struggling to find equivalent work, had 2 kids in college, tuition pressure. I understood that kind of financial stress. I tried to be welcoming. At first, everything seemed fine. Lisa would join us for Tuesday dinners occasionally. She'd bring wine, tell stories, laugh at Robert's jokes. But slowly, things changed. The dinners became less frequent for me. "Lisa's coming over to help with some paperwork," Robert would say. "Let's do Wednesday instead." Then Wednesday would get canceled too. Not feeling well, Maggie. Rain check? By the last 6 months of his life, I was lucky to see him twice a month. When I did visit, Lisa or David were always there, hovering, helpful, too helpful. My neighbor Eleanor noticed. Eleanor Morrison is 70, has lived next door for 15 years. We met at a book club meeting and became close after my husband died. She's one of those eternally optimistic people, sees the good in everyone, sometimes to a fault. Eleanor had been watching the situation with Robert for months. One morning, over coffee at my kitchen table, she finally said something. "Maggie, I saw Lisa at Robert's house again yesterday. She had some man with her. Briefcase. Looked like a lawyer." I'd stirred my coffee slowly. Robert mentioned he was updating some estate planning paperwork. Lisa's lawyer friend was helping him, said it was just routine. Eleanor's face had gone uncertain. "I'm sure it's fine," she'd said, but her voice didn't match her words. I'd shrugged it off. Family helps family. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe. 2 years ago, Robert had mentioned it casually over one of our increasingly rare Tuesday dinners. "Lisa's lawyer friend is helping me update some paperwork, power of attorney stuff. You know how it is." I'd nodded, thought it was responsible, thought it meant he was planning ahead, being smart. I should have asked questions, should have offered to go with him to his attorney, but I didn't want to seem suspicious, didn't want to act like I didn't trust Lisa. Family loyalty, right? You give people the benefit of the doubt. You assume good intentions. That was my mistake. That's the red flag I ignored. This morning, the day after the memorial, I woke up at 5:30. That's normal for me now. Old people don't sleep well. I made coffee the way I always do. 2 eggs over easy. Wheat toast, newspaper spread on the kitchen table. Robert's favorite breakfast. I still make it every Tuesday morning, even though he's gone. Habit, I guess. Or ritual. Or the only way I know to keep him close. I sat there with my coffee going cold, and I thought about that manila envelope in my purse, the one Robert had given me 8 years ago. It was after his last chemotherapy session. We were sitting in his living room. He'd just gotten the all clear from his oncologist. Cancer was gone. He should have been celebrating. Instead, he looked serious. He'd handed me the envelope. "This is my will, Maggie. The real one. Keep it safe. Put it somewhere secure. Don't tell anyone you have it." I'd frowned. "Robert, you're fine. You don't need to—" He'd gripped my hand. "Just in case. Promise me. Keep it safe." I'd promised. Driven straight to the bank. Put it in my safe deposit box. Tried not to think about why he'd asked me to hide it. I finished my coffee. Put the dishes in the sink. Eleanor knocked on the back door around 8. She does that most mornings. Brings over something in labeled Tupperware. Casseroles usually. Tuna noodle on Mondays, chicken pot pie on Thursdays. It's her love language, those casseroles. This morning, it was banana bread. "How are you holding up?" she asked, setting the container on my counter. I shrugged. "I'm okay. The memorial was difficult." Difficult. Such a small word for what I'd felt. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "I saw where they made you sit. That wasn't right, Maggie." I appreciated that. The acknowledgement. The validation. "I need to get something from the bank," I told her. She nodded. Didn't ask what. Good friends know when not to ask. The bank was quiet on a Friday morning. I signed in at the safe deposit box area. The clerk brought me to the private room. I opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was the envelope, still sealed. Robert's handwriting on the front. Last will and testament of Robert James Carter. Keep safe, M. I sat down in the uncomfortable chair, opened the envelope carefully. The document inside was professionally prepared, dated 8 years ago, witnessed by 2 signatures I didn't recognize, notarized with an official stamp. I read through it slowly. Everything. His house, his investments, his savings, his personal belongings. Everything went to me, Margaret Elizabeth Carter, his sister, primary beneficiary. There was a provision for a scholarship fund, a donation to the hospice that had cared for him. But the bulk of it, about $800,000 worth, was mine. Lisa and David weren't mentioned. Not once. Not even as alternate beneficiaries. I reread the signature line. Robert's handwriting was clear, firm. The signature he'd used for 40 years, the one I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists, and the note he'd left when he borrowed my car. This was Robert's signature. This was his will, his real wishes. I folded the document carefully, put it back in the envelope, took it with me. At home, I placed it on my kitchen table, made a fresh cup of coffee I didn't drink, stared at that envelope for 20 minutes. Then I picked up my phone, called the only person I could think to call, Susan Chen, estate attorney, friend of my book club member Joyce. I'd met her once at a holiday party. She'd given me her card. "Call if you ever need anything," she'd said. I'd kept that card in my wallet for 2 years. Now I pulled it out, dialed her number. She answered on the third ring. "This is Susan." I took a breath. "Susan, this is Margaret Carter. We met at Joyce's Christmas party. I need help. It's about my brother's will." Susan asked me to come to her office Monday morning. That gave me the weekend to think, to doubt myself, to wonder if I was imagining things. Saturday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with Robert's will spread in front of me, read it 3 times. Each time, the words were the same. Each time, my name was the primary beneficiary. Each time, Lisa and David weren't mentioned. This was real. This was Robert's signature. I knew it in my bones. Sunday afternoon, Lisa called. My phone buzzed on the counter while I was washing dishes. Her name on the screen made my stomach tighten. I dried my hands, answered. "Hello, Lisa." Her voice was warm, practiced. "Margaret, hi. I wanted to talk to you about Robert's estate. Can you come by the house tomorrow? Say around 2? The house. She was already calling it the house, like it belonged to her. "What's this about?" I kept my voice level. "Just some paperwork, getting everything in order, you understand." I understood perfectly. "I'll be there." Monday at 2, I drove to Robert's house. My house now, according to the will in my safe deposit box. But I didn't say that. Not yet. The driveway held 2 cars, Lisa's Lexus and David's sedan. I parked behind them, walked up the front steps I'd climbed thousands of times, rang the doorbell instead of using my key. Lisa answered. "Margaret, come in." The living room looked different. Some of Robert's things were already gone. His favorite reading chair, the brass lamp he'd inherited from our father, the bookshelf with his collection of history books. "Where's Robert's chair?" I asked. Lisa waved a hand. "Oh, we donated some items. He would have wanted his things to go to people who needed them." "We." She said we like she had authority, like she had any right. David sat at the dining table. He stood when I entered. "Hi, Margaret." At least he had the grace to look uncomfortable. Lisa gestured to a chair. "Sit, please. This won't take long." I sat. She pulled out a document from a leather folder, slid it across the table. "This is Robert's will. He had it updated last year, November, to be specific. We wanted you to see it." I picked up the document. Read the first page. Last will and testament of Robert James Carter, dated November 15th, 2023. 13 months ago. I skimmed through. Everything. The house, the investments, the personal property went to Lisa Marie Patterson and David Allen Patterson in equal shares. My name appeared once. To my sister Margaret, I leave my personal photo albums and the sum of $5,000. $5,000, after 42 years. I set the document down carefully. When did he do this? Lisa's expression was sympathetic. Too sympathetic. Last November, he called us, said he wanted to make some changes. We helped him find an attorney. I looked at David. He nodded. He was very clear about it, Margaret. He appreciated everything you did for him over the years, but we were with him every day at the end. He wanted to acknowledge that. Every day. They'd been there 6 months. I'd been there 42 years. Did he tell you why he changed it? Lisa reached across the table, patted my hand like I was a child. You weren't around much at the end, Margaret. I think he felt, I don't want to say abandoned, but... She trailed off. Let the implication hang. My face went hot. I visited every Tuesday until you stopped letting me in. Lisa's expression shifted, still sympathetic, but with an edge now. Margaret, you came a few times, but Robert was tired. The doctors said limited visitors. We had to make difficult decisions about his care. That was a lie. The hospice nurse had never mentioned visitor limits, but I didn't argue, not yet. I looked down at the will again. Something caught my eye. Third page, list of assets. Robert's vacation cabin in northern Michigan. I looked up. He sold that cabin 2 years ago. Lisa blinked. I'm sorry? I pointed to the line. This will mentions the cabin, but he sold it in 2022. I was with him when he signed the sale papers. If this will was written last November, why would it mention property he didn't own anymore? The room went quiet. David shifted in his seat. Lisa recovered quickly. There must be a mistake in the drafting. The attorney probably used an old asset list. Her voice was smooth, but her eyes weren't. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to take a picture of this, for my records. Lisa's hand shot out. I don't think that's necessary. I met her gaze. I think it is. I photographed each page while she watched. She couldn't stop me without making a scene. When I finished, I stood. I'll need to have my attorney look at this. I have some questions. Lisa stood too. Her voice cooled. Of course. But Robert's wishes were very clear, Margaret. This is what he wanted. I hope you'll respect that. I picked up my purse. I respect Robert. I always have. That's why I need to make sure this is actually what he wanted. I walked to the door, turned back. One more thing. What's the name of the attorney who prepared this? David answered before Lisa could stop him. Henderson and Associates, over on Maple Street. I nodded. Thank you. Outside, my hands shook as I unlocked my car. I sat in the driver's seat, didn't start the engine, pulled out my phone, texted the photos to Susan. Then I called her. She answered immediately. Margaret, I got your photos. I'm looking at them now. I could hear papers rustling. And? A pause. Where did you get this document? I explained the meeting. The will dated last November. The cabin that didn't exist. Susan was quiet for a moment. Then, Margaret, look at the notary stamp. Bottom of page 4. I flipped through the photos on my phone, found it. A circular stamp with a name and number. Okay, I see it. Susan's voice was tight. That notary, Angela Ramirez. I know her, or I knew her. She lost her notary license in 2021. 3 years ago, state investigation for fraud. My heart pounded. So this can't be real. Susan's voice was careful, professional. If this document is dated last November and the notary lost her license 2 years before that, then this stamp shouldn't exist. Either someone made a mistake or she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Or they forged it, I said quietly. Susan's tone shifted, became more urgent. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring Robert's original will. We need to file an objection to probate immediately. I looked up at Robert's house. Lisa stood at the living room window watching me. I started the car. I'll be there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Kept thinking about that notary stamp. About the cabin that didn't exist. About Lisa's face when I pointed out the discrepancy. Around 3 a.m, I got up. Made coffee I didn't drink. Sat at the kitchen table with both wills in front of me. Robert's real will, 8 years old with my name as beneficiary. Lisa's version, 13 months old, cutting me out almost entirely. I looked at the signatures. Robert's signature on my will was firm, clear. The loops of the R and the C distinctive. The signature on Lisa's will looked similar, but something was off. The pressure wasn't quite right. The angle of the letters slightly different, like someone had traced it, copied it. I wasn't a handwriting expert, but I'd seen Robert's signature for 68 years. Birthday cards, Christmas gifts, the note he'd left on my fridge last year. Borrowed your car for oil change, back by noon. R. That signature was Robert. The one on Lisa's will? I wasn't sure anymore. Eleanor knocked on my back door at 7, found me still sitting at the table, coffee cold, wills spread out like evidence at a crime scene. Maggie, You're up early." She saw my face, sat down without asking. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The memorial, the meeting with Lisa, the cabin, the notary. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "You're doing the right thing. Robert trusted you with that will for a reason." I nodded, wanted to believe her. What if I'm wrong? What if he really did change his mind? Eleanor's voice was firm. Then why forge a notary stamp? Why mention property he didn't own? Maggie, if their will was real, it would be perfect. The mistakes are telling you something. She was right. The mistakes were the proof. I gathered the documents, put them in my bag. "I'm meeting Susan at 9. Eleanor stood. "You want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "I need to do this myself, but thank you." She hugged me at the door. "You're stronger than you think, Maggie." I hoped she was right. Susan's office was on the 3rd floor of a professional building downtown. Glass doors, modern furniture, walls lined with law books. She met me in the waiting room herself, 55, maybe 60. Sharp black suit, gray hair pulled back, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Margaret, come in." Her office had a large mahogany desk, 2 client chairs, and a wall of windows overlooking the city. Plants on the windowsill, a peace lily, a pothos vine. They reminded me of Robert's garden, the rose bushes he could never quite get to bloom right. I pushed the thought away, focused on why I was here. I handed her the envelope with Robert's original will. She opened it carefully, read through it. Her expression stayed professional, but I saw something shift in her eyes, recognition, understanding. "This is solid, Margaret, properly witnessed, notarized by a licensed professional, dated 8 years ago." She set it aside, pulled out her phone, opened the photos I'd sent her. The forged will. "Now let's look at what Lisa and David presented." She studied the images for a long moment. Then she reached for a magnifying lamp on her desk, adjusted the light, zoomed in on the signature line. "Come here, look at this." I moved around the desk. She pointed to Robert's signature on the forged will. Under the magnification, I could see details I'd missed before. "Look at the pressure," Susan said. "See how the ink is consistent throughout? No variation in thickness. When someone signs naturally, there's pressure variation. Heavy on the downstrokes, lighter on the curves." She pulled up the photo of the original will on her computer, zoomed in on that signature. "Now look at this one. See the difference? The R and the C have heavy pressure. The connecting strokes are lighter. That's how Robert naturally signed." I stared at both signatures. She was right. The forged one looked traced, copied, like someone had practiced it carefully but couldn't quite match the natural flow. Susan pulled out another document. I had a colleague run the notary information, Angela Ramirez, the notary on Lisa's will. She slid a printout across the desk. Official state records. Her notary license was revoked in March 2021. Investigation found she'd notarized documents without proper identification. She lost her commission. This stamp, she tapped the forged will, shouldn't exist on any document dated after March 2021, certainly not on a will from November 2023. My hands gripped the edge of the desk. "So this is forged." Susan's voice was careful, professional. "This gives us strong grounds to contest probate. But Margaret, we need more than just this. We need to build an airtight case." I sat there staring at that signature. 42 years I'd known Robert's handwriting, birthday cards where he'd write, "Love Bobby," our childhood nickname for him, grocery lists he'd leave on my counter when he borrowed milk, the note he'd put in my mailbox last Christmas. "Maggie, thanks for everything this year. You're the best sister a guy could ask for. R." That signature had been his. The one on Lisa's will, someone had copied it. Someone had traced his name. Someone had erased him and replaced him with a forgery. What do we do next? My voice came out steadier than I expected. Susan pulled out a yellow legal pad. started making notes. We need to build evidence in multiple categories. Financial records showing no payments to the law firm that allegedly prepared this will. Medical records documenting Robert's physical condition in his final year. Digital evidence of your relationship with him. Professional testimony from people who saw him regularly. She looked up. And we need to move fast. Lisa and David have probably already filed for probate. We need to file an objection immediately. I nodded, felt something shift inside me. Not anger, something quieter, something more like determination. Tell me what you need. I'll get it. Over the next week, we gathered everything. Susan filed the objection to probate, requested a formal hearing, subpoenaed records. I signed authorization forms with steady hands. Each signature felt like taking back a piece of Robert, taking back the truth. Susan ordered a forensic document analysis from a certified expert. Cost me $800, worth every penny. The report came back definitive. The signature on Lisa's will showed signs of simulation. The natural variation in pressure and speed was absent. Consistent with tracing or careful copying, the notary stamp was confirmed fraudulent. The expert would testify to this if needed. I called Tom Bradley, Robert's financial advisor. We'd met several times over the years when Robert wanted to discuss investments. Tom had managed Robert's accounts for 20 years. Tom, it's Margaret Carter, Robert's sister. I need your help. Tom agreed to meet me at his office that afternoon. He pulled Robert's files, went through them methodically. Margaret, I have records of every transaction Robert made through me. His accounts were substantial, about $800,000 total when he died. He showed me statements. In November 2023, the month Lisa claims he updated his will, there's no payment to any law firm, no legal fees at all. He pulled up another screen. And look at this. The beneficiary designations on all his investment accounts. They've been unchanged since 2015. They all list you as primary beneficiary. He turned the monitor so I could see. There was my name, Margaret Elizabeth Carter. Robert never asked me to change these, Tom said. If he'd truly wanted Lisa and David as beneficiaries, he would have updated these accounts too. He was meticulous about paperwork. Tom gave me copies of everything, signed a statement saying Robert never mentioned changing beneficiaries, never discussed a new will in any of their quarterly meetings. There's something else, Tom said. About 3 months before Robert died, Lisa came to my office, had paperwork claiming power of attorney, wanted access to Robert's accounts. My stomach dropped. What did you do? Tom's expression was firm. I refused. Told her I needed direct confirmation from Robert. Called him that afternoon. He was confused. Said he hadn't authorized any power of attorney. I flagged it as suspicious. Made notes in his file. He pulled up those notes. Showed me. Attempted POA access by L. Patterson. Client denied authorization. Possible fraud attempt. Advised client to review all legal documents. Tom had protected Robert, had seen what Lisa was trying to do. Why didn't you tell me? Tom looked apologetic. I thought about it, but Robert said he'd handle it. Said he'd talk to his attorney. I assumed he did. He hadn't. Or if he did, Lisa found a way around it. Susan subpoenaed Robert's medical records from the hospice that cared for him in his final months. The records showed what I already knew but needed documented. Robert had advanced arthritis in both hands, limited dexterity. Daily notes from the hospice nurse described difficulty with fine motor tasks. Patient requires assistance opening medication bottles. Signature on prescription refills shows significant tremor. If Robert had difficulty signing prescriptions, how could he have signed a complex legal document? Susan also tracked down Maria Gonzalez, the hospice nurse who'd been with Robert most days. Maria agreed to give a statement. I met her at a coffee shop near the hospital. She was younger than I expected, early 40s maybe. Warm eyes. She remembered Robert clearly. Mr. Carter was a kind man. Always thanked me. Always asked about my family. She stirred her coffee. His hands were very weak toward the end. Arthritis and the medication made it worse. He could barely hold a pen. I had to help him sign his name on forms. I showed her the signature on Lisa's will. Could he have signed this? Maria studied it, shook her head. Not without help, and definitely not with that level of control. This looks too steady, too practiced. She looked at me. Mr. Carter talked about you often, his sister Maggie. He said you were the only family he had left that mattered. My eyes burned. I blinked it away. Did he ever mention changing his will, leaving things to Lisa and David? Maria was firm. Never. He talked about you inheriting the house, said he hoped you'd keep his rose garden going. Susan pulled the property records for the vacation cabin, the one Lisa's will mentioned. Official county records showed the sale clearly. Sold in July 2022, 16 months before the alleged new will was written. Lisa's will specifically listed the cabin as an asset to be divided between her and David. But it didn't exist. Robert had sold it to help pay for his medical care. I'd been with him at the closing, held his hand while he signed the papers, sad to let go of the place where we'd spent summer vacations as kids. The property records were public. Anyone checking would have found this discrepancy. But Lisa and David hadn't checked, or they had, and they thought no one would notice. The digital evidence was easier than I expected. I had years of emails with Robert. I went through them, found the thread from his final months. 2 months before he died, he'd written, "Maggie, thank you for Tuesday dinner. Best part of my week. Don't know what I'd do without you. Love, Bobby." 3 weeks before he died. "Feeling rough today. Glad you're coming by. You always make things better." 1 week before, "The nurse says I'm declining fast. Scared, Maggie, but grateful you're here." Lisa's will claimed Robert had changed his mind, decided I wasn't important. The emails told a different story. Susan scanned them all, added them to our file, evidence that our relationship was strong until the very end. I created a folder at home, organized everything, color-coded tabs, bank statements, medical records, property deeds, email printouts, witness statements, the forensic report. It felt like building a case, like being a teacher again, preparing lesson plans, everything in order, everything documented. I worked at my kitchen table late into the night. Eleanor brought me dinner twice. Didn't ask questions. Just set the casserole dish down, squeezed my shoulder, left. I was grateful for her quiet support. Susan called on Friday afternoon, 2 weeks after I'd first come to her office. "Margaret, we have a strong case, multiple types of evidence, financial, medical, forensic, documentary, testimonial. Lisa and David's will has significant problems. The forged notary stamp alone is enough. But with everything else?" She paused. "We're ready to present this at the probate hearing." I sat at my kitchen table, looked at my folder of evidence, thought about Robert, about 42 years of Tuesday dinners, about the real will he'd given me 8 years ago. "When's the hearing?" Susan's voice was steady. 3 weeks, December 15th. Be prepared. This won't be easy. But Margaret? Yes? We're going to win this. After I hung up, I drove past Robert's house. Didn't turn in, just slowed down as I passed. Saw Lisa's car in the driveway. Saw the lights on in rooms that used to be his. I kept driving. Went home. Made coffee. I actually drank this time. Sat in my living room with Robert's photo on the mantel, the Thanksgiving one, his arm around me, both of us smiling. "I'm fighting for you, Bobby," I said to the photo. "I'm fighting for what you actually wanted, not what they claim you wanted." The house was quiet, but for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I could breathe. We had evidence. We had a case. We had the truth. And the truth was on my side. Susan gave me a key to Robert's house. "You'll need access," she said, "to inventory his belongings, to gather any additional documents we might need." Lisa had changed the locks the week after Robert died, but Susan had gotten a court order, temporary access pending the probate hearing. So here I was, standing on the front porch of my brother's house on a cold December afternoon. The key felt heavy in my hand. I unlocked the door, stepped inside. The house was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Robert's house had never been quiet. There was always music playing, the radio tuned to the oldies station, or the television on in the background, or Robert humming while he cooked. Now there was nothing, just silence and the smell of closed-up rooms. I walked through slowly. The living room looked strange, furniture rearranged, Robert's favorite reading chair gone, the brass lamp missing, photos removed from the mantel. Lisa had been busy erasing him, making it hers before it was legally hers. I moved to the kitchen, Robert's kitchen, where we'd had so many Tuesday dinners. The table was still there, same oak table from when he'd first bought this house 30 years ago. I pulled out a chair, sat down, ran my hand across the wood. How many times had I sat here? How many meals? How many conversations? Thousands. I remembered one dinner in particular. Thanksgiving, 6 years ago. Robert had insisted on hosting. Just the two of us. His marriage had been over for years by then. My husband Tom had died the year before. We were both alone, so we made our own family. Robert cooked a turkey. I brought mashed potatoes and green beans. He'd set the table with the good china, white plates with gold trim, the ones that had been our mother's. He'd placed yellow roses in a vase at the center, his favorite. A proper Thanksgiving, he'd said, grinning. We'd sat down. Just the two of us at this big table meant for a family. Robert had raised his glass of wine. To family, he'd said, the one you're born with and the one you choose. I choose you, Maggie. Always have. Always will. I'd clinked my glass against his. I choose you too, Bobby. We'd eaten slowly, talked about everything and nothing. He'd told terrible jokes. I'd laughed until my sides hurt. After dinner, we'd done the dishes together. Him washing, me drying. He'd hummed while he worked. Some old song from when we were kids. When he'd dropped me off at home that night, he'd hugged me tight. Best Thanksgiving ever, he'd said. I'd agreed. Last Thanksgiving was different. I'd texted Robert 2 weeks before. Tuesday dinner? Or should we do Thanksgiving together this year? He'd taken hours to respond. Lisa insists I rest. Doctor's orders. Sorry, Maggie. Rain check? I'd sent back. Of course. Feel better. But something had felt wrong. Robert never canceled our Tuesdays. Never. I'd driven by his house on Thanksgiving Day. Told myself I was just checking, making sure he was okay. Lisa's car had been in the driveway. David's, too. 3 other cars I didn't recognize. Through the window, I could see people gathered in the dining room, a full Thanksgiving dinner. Robert at the head of the table, Lisa beside him. He'd looked tired, thin. But he was there. Having Thanksgiving dinner with Lisa and her friends. Without me, I'd driven home, made a turkey sandwich, eaten alone. It was the first Thanksgiving in 42 years that Robert and I hadn't spent together. I stood up from the kitchen table, walked to his study. This room looked the same. Maybe Lisa hadn't bothered with it yet, or maybe she'd left it for last. Robert's desk sat against the window. Dark wood, organized drawers, a leather chair worn smooth from years of use, his computer monitor on the left, a cup of pens on the right, and in the center, a framed photo, Robert and me. That Thanksgiving 6 years ago. Someone had taken the picture after dinner. We were both smiling, his arm around my shoulders, the yellow roses visible on the table behind us. I picked up the frame, looked at our faces. We'd been happy that day. We'd chosen each other. That was real. What Lisa claimed, that Robert had changed his mind, that he didn't value me anymore, that wasn't real. That was a lie someone had written on paper. I sat down in Robert's chair, put my hands on his desk. This is where he'd paid bills, answered emails, planned his business strategies. This is where he'd lived his life. The desk was neat, everything in its place, like Robert. I opened the top drawer. Inside was his address book, old-fashioned, leather-bound, pages yellowed with age. Robert had never trusted digital contacts. "What if the computer crashes?" he'd say. "What if the cloud disappears?" So he kept this book. Handwritten entries, friends, business associates, doctors, lawyers, people who'd been part of his life. I opened it slowly, flipped through the pages, found the hospice, Maria Gonzalez's name with a phone number, Robert's accountant, his golf club buddy Ed, his neighbor Mrs. Chen. Each name was a connection. Each person had known Robert, had seen him, had heard him talk about his life, about me. I sat there with that book open in my lap. 42 years he'd been my big brother, 4 years older, always protective, always there when I needed him. When my husband died, Robert had called me every single day for 6 months, just to check in, just to make sure I was eating, sleeping, getting out of bed. "You're going to be okay, Maggie," he'd tell me. "I promise, you're going to be okay." And I had been, because he'd been there. I realized something sitting in that chair, in his study, surrounded by his things. I was the only one who truly knew him. Lisa had known him for 3 years at the end, 3 years of doctor's appointments and medication schedules and hospice care. But I'd known him for 68 years. I knew the Robert who'd taught me to ride a bike when I was 6, who'd scared off my first boyfriend when I was 15, who'd walked me down the aisle when I was 23 because our father had already died, who'd held my hand at Tom's funeral, who'd shown up every single time I needed him. That Robert, the real Robert, that's who I knew. And if I didn't fight for his wishes, who would? No one. Lisa and David would take everything, would erase him completely, would make it seem like he'd chosen them over me. That couldn't happen. I wouldn't let it happen. I picked up my phone, looked at the address book again, started calling. Each call was the same. "Hi, this is Margaret Carter, Robert's sister. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to ask you about Robert." Every person I called said yes, said they'd help, said they remembered Robert fondly. Several said they'd wondered why I wasn't at the memorial. Some said they'd seen Lisa and David taking things from the house before Robert was even buried. One of Robert's golf buddies said Robert had told him just 3 months before he died. "Maggie's the only family I've got that matters. The rest are vultures waiting for me to die." I wrote down every word, every detail, every offer to help. I made 12 calls that afternoon. 12 people who'd testify if needed, who'd sign statements, who'd confirm that Robert and I were close until the very end, that he'd never mentioned Lisa and David as heirs, that he'd talked about me constantly. With each call, I felt steadier. This wasn't about anger. Anger was hot and loud and temporary. This was about honoring Robert, about protecting what he'd built, about making sure his actual wishes, not Lisa's version of his wishes, were respected. I could hear Robert's voice in my head, the voice that had guided me through so many hard moments. "You've got this, Maggie. You're stronger than you think. Don't let them win." And I wouldn't. I had evidence. I had witnesses. I had the truth. And I had 42 years of proof that Robert had loved me, had chosen me, had trusted me with his real will for exactly this reason. I closed the address book, set it carefully back in the drawer, looked at the photo one more time, touched the glass over Robert's face. "I'm fighting for you, Bobby. Not for the money, not for the house. For you, for your memory, for what you actually wanted." The room was still quiet, but I didn't feel alone anymore. I stood up, straightened my shoulders, walked out of that study feeling different than when I'd walked in. Not broken, not helpless, not like a victim, like someone who knew exactly what she had to do, like someone who was going to do it, no matter what it took. The next morning, Eleanor came over earlier than usual. 7:30. I was already up drinking coffee at the kitchen table. She knocked once and walked in. That's how close we'd become. "Maggie, I need to tell you something." She sat down without being asked, looked uncomfortable. "I should have said this months ago." I set down my coffee cup. What is it? Eleanor twisted her hands together. Last spring, April, I think, I saw Lisa at Robert's house. She had a man with her. Briefcase, professional looking. They were there for over an hour. My chest tightened. Why didn't you tell me? Eleanor's face went pained. I thought it was his business. Thought maybe it was his accountant or something. I didn't want to seem nosy. But Maggie, after what you told me about the forged will... She trailed off. I think that was the lawyer. I think that's when they did it. I reached across the table, took her hand. Eleanor, it's okay. You're telling me now. She squeezed back. There's more. I saw them take things. After Robert died, before the memorial, a truck came. They loaded furniture, boxes. I thought they had permission. I thought... Her voice cracked. I should have said something then, too. I should have called you. I felt something shift. Not anger at Eleanor. Gratitude. Can you write down what you saw? Dates? Times? What you remember? Eleanor nodded immediately. Yes. Anything you need. I called Susan that afternoon, told her about Eleanor's observations. Susan added Eleanor to the witness list. One more person who'd seen Lisa's manipulation. One more piece of evidence. 2 days later, Tom called me. Margaret, I found something in Robert's files. Something I need to show you. We met at his office. He pulled up documents on his computer screen. Remember I told you about Lisa trying to access Robert's accounts with a power of attorney? I nodded. Tom clicked through files. I kept detailed notes, but I went back through Robert's actual legal documents, the ones on file with us. There's no power of attorney naming Lisa. None. So where did she get that paperwork? He turned the screen toward me. I called the attorney's office she claimed prepared it. They have no record of Robert as a client, no record of any POA documents. My hands went cold. She forged that, too. Tom's expression was grim. I believe so. I've documented everything. I'll testify to this if you need me to. Susan filed all the evidence with the probate court, requested a formal hearing. The court scheduled it for mid-January, 6 weeks away. Lisa and David would have to respond, would have to present their case, would have to explain the forged notary stamp, the impossible property reference, the fake POA, all of it. Susan was confident. They're going to fold, Margaret. The evidence is overwhelming. But I knew better than to get my hopes up. Not yet. 3 weeks before Christmas, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Carter? This is James. Reynolds. I represent Lisa Patterson and David Patterson. A lawyer. Lisa's lawyer. My stomach dropped. Yes? His voice was smooth, professional. Mrs. Carter, my clients are aware you've filed an objection to Mr. Carter's will. They wanted me to reach out, see if we could resolve this amicably. Amicably? That was a word people used when they wanted you to give up. I'm listening. Reynolds cleared his throat. My clients are prepared to offer you a settlement, $50,000 cash. You withdraw your objection and everyone moves forward. $50,000. That was a lot of money for someone on a teacher's pension, a year's income, maybe more. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Mr. Reynolds, the estate is worth $800,000. Your clients are offering me $50,000 to walk away from what's legally mine. A pause. Mrs. Carter, litigation is expensive, time-consuming, emotionally draining. My clients are trying to be reasonable. I kept my voice level. Tell your clients I'll see them in court. I hung up before he could respond. I called Susan immediately, told her about the settlement offer. She laughed. Actually laughed. Margaret, that's an admission they know their will won't hold up. They're scared. People only offer money when they think they're going to lose. That made me feel better. A little. What do I do? Susan's voice was firm. Nothing. We proceed as planned. Let them panic. 2 days later, a registered letter arrived. I signed for it, opened it carefully. Legal letterhead. Cease and desist. Demand to stop harassment and defamation. The letter claimed I was harassing Lisa and David, making false accusations, damaging their reputations, demanding I stop all communication about Robert's estate or face legal action. My hands shook as I read it. This was a threat, a real one. I called Susan. Again, she sounded annoyed when I read her the letter. Empty threat. Classic intimidation tactic. Ignore it completely. They're trying to scare you into backing down. I wanted to believe her, but the letter felt heavy in my hands. Official. Dangerous. That Sunday, it was my turn to host book club. 6 women, ages 60 to 75. We'd been meeting monthly for 12 years, reading mysteries mostly, sometimes romance. Today, we were supposed to discuss a thriller about corporate fraud, but when everyone arrived, Joyce spoke up. "Maggie, we're not talking about the book today. We're talking about you." I blinked, started to protest. Joyce held up a hand. "Eleanor told us what's happening with Robert's estate, with Lisa and David." I shot Eleanor a look. She shrugged apologetically. "They asked. I thought you could use the support." The women gathered around my dining table, brought casseroles, of course, Barbara's tuna noodle, Anne's chicken pot pie, Linda's brownies. They sat me down, made me eat, made me talk. I told them everything, the forged will, the evidence, the threats. When I finished, Linda spoke first. "My sister went through something similar. Her husband's kids from his first marriage. Tried to claim he'd changed his will at the end. Cancer, dementia. They said he wasn't in his right mind when he married her." She shook her head. "Took 2 years in court, but she won. The original will stood." Joyce leaned forward. "Last year at the grocery store, I ran into Robert. We chatted for a bit. He mentioned you, said you were the only family he needed, said he'd set everything up to make sure you were taken care of." She touched my hand. "That was 9 months before he died. He was clear-minded, knew exactly what he wanted." Barbara added her own story. One of Robert's golf buddies had told her the same thing. "Robert used to talk about you at the club. Always my sister Maggie this and my sister Maggie that." Those men knew. Everyone knew. The validation helped. Made me feel less alone, less crazy for fighting this. After they left, Eleanor stayed to help clean up. We worked in comfortable silence. She washed dishes. I dried, like Robert and I used to do after those Tuesday dinners. "Thank you," I said finally, "for telling them, for getting them involved." Eleanor smiled. "That's what friends do, Maggie. We show up." I thought about that, about chosen family, about the people who were there not because they had to be, but because they wanted to be. Robert had chosen me. I'd chosen him. And now these women were choosing to support me. That meant something. January arrived faster than I expected. The holidays passed in a blur. Quiet Christmas alone. New Year's Eve watching television with Eleanor. Then suddenly it was January 10th. 5 days until the hearing. Susan called for a final meeting. I drove to her office through cold rain. She had everything organized, binders of evidence, witness statements, forensic reports. "We're ready, Margaret, more than ready." She walked me through what would happen. The hearing would be at the probate court, not a full trial, more like a formal mediation. A mediator would review the evidence from both sides, ask questions, try to facilitate a resolution. If we can't settle, it goes to a full court trial, but I don't think it will come to that. She met my eyes. Lisa and David are going to see this evidence. They're going to realize they can't win. They'll settle. I wanted to believe her, but I'd learned not to count on anything. 3 months had passed since Robert's memorial. 3 months since I'd been sent to the back row, since I'd discovered what Lisa and David were trying to do. In that time, I'd gathered 5 types of evidence, interviewed a dozen witnesses, spent hours with lawyers and accountants and forensic experts. I'd organized files, made phone calls, researched law. I'd transformed from a grieving sister into something else, someone who understood probate law, someone who knew how to build a case, someone who wouldn't back down. The woman who'd sat in that back row, clutching her purse with the real will inside, she was still there, but she wasn't helpless anymore. She was armed with truth, with evidence, with allies, and she was ready. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Got up at 3, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with both wills in front of me one more time. Robert's real will, 8 years old, clear, legal, leaving everything to me. Lisa's forgery, 13 months old, full of mistakes, trying to erase me. I touched Robert's signature on the real will, traced the letters with my finger. This was his hand, his choice, his voice. Tomorrow, I'd make sure everyone heard it. The hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock on January 15th. Susan met me at the building entrance at 1:30. Remember, this is a mediation hearing, not a trial. Professional, measured. Let the evidence speak. I nodded, gripped my folder tighter. Inside were copies of everything. The real will, the forensic report, bank statements, all of it. Susan had the originals, but I wanted my own copies, needed to hold them, to know they were real. The law office was on the 5th floor, modern building, glass and steel. We took the elevator up in silence. The waiting area had gray couches and abstract art on the walls. Lisa and David were already there, sitting across from each other. Lisa in a black suit, David in gray. Their attorney stood near the receptionist desk. Older man, silver hair, expensive suit. He looked up when we entered, nodded at Susan. Professional courtesy, no warmth. Lisa's eyes met mine for a second, then looked away. David stared at his shoes. Neither of them spoke. The tension in that waiting room was thick enough to touch. At 2 o'clock exactly, a woman emerged from the inner offices. Professional, early 50s. "I'm Patricia Meadows. I'll be mediating today. Please come in." We followed her down a hallway to a conference room. Large mahogany table, 8 leather chairs, windows overlooking downtown. The city looked cold and gray through the glass. Patricia gestured to the table. Ms. Chen and Mrs. Carter on this side. Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Patterson, Mr. Patterson on that side. We sat. The table between us felt like a canyon. Patricia sat at the head, opened a laptop. "I've reviewed the preliminary documents from both parties. This is an informal mediation to see if we can reach a resolution regarding the estate of Robert James Carter. If we cannot, this matter will proceed to formal probate court trial." She looked at both sides. "Let's begin with Ms. Chen's presentation of evidence." Susan stood, opened her briefcase, pulled out 2 documents, placed them side by side on the table. "These are 2 wills. Both claim to be the last will and testament of Robert Carter." She pointed to the left document. "This will was executed 8 years ago, properly witnessed by 2 individuals, notarized by a licensed professional. It names Margaret Carter, the decedent's sister, as primary beneficiary." She pointed to the right document. "This will, presented by Miss Patterson and Mr. Patterson, claims to have been executed 13 months ago. It names them as equal beneficiaries." Susan pulled out a magnifying glass, actually placed it on the table. "Let's look at the signatures." She positioned both documents under better light. Patricia leaned forward. So did Reynolds. Susan pointed to the forged will's signature. "Notice the consistency of the ink pressure. No variation in thickness. When someone signs naturally, there's pressure variation." She moved to the original will. This signature shows natural variation, heavy downstrokes, lighter connecting strokes. This is how Robert Carter signed for 40 years. Reynolds started to speak. Susan held up a hand. "I'm not finished." She pulled out another document. "This is a forensic analysis from a certified document examiner. His conclusion, the signature on the will presented by Ms. Patterson and Mr. Patterson, shows signs of simulation, consistent with tracing or careful copying." Susan wasn't done. She pulled out another paper. "Now let's discuss the notary." She slid it across to Patricia. The will presented by my opponents bears a notary stamp from Angela Ramirez. According to state records, Ms. Ramirez lost her notary commission in March 2021. Investigation found she notarized documents without proper identification. Her license was revoked. Susan looked at Reynolds. The will your clients presented is dated November 2023. How does a notary whose license was revoked 2.5 years earlier notarize a document? Reynolds cleared his throat. There may have been an administrative error. Susan cut him off. An administrative error that invalidates the document. Patricia made notes on her laptop. Susan continued. There's more. The will presented by Ms. Patterson and Mr. Patterson lists among the assets a vacation cabin in northern Michigan. Property records show Robert Carter sold that cabin in July 2022, 16 months before the alleged will was executed. She pulled out the deed, the sale documentation, placed them on the table. How does a will written in November 2023 reference property that didn't exist? David shifted in his seat, wouldn't look up. Lisa's jaw tightened. Reynolds flipped through papers, looking for something to say, found nothing. Susan sat down, looked at Patricia. We also have witness testimony. I'd like to present 2 witnesses now. Others have provided written statements. Patricia nodded. Susan opened her laptop. First witness is via video conference. Maria Gonzalez, hospice nurse who cared for Robert Carter in his final months. The screen on the wall flickered to life. Maria appeared, sitting in what looked like a home office. She raised her right hand. Patricia administered a simple affirmation. Maria nodded solemnly. Susan began. Ms. Gonzalez, can you describe Robert Carter's physical condition in his final months? Maria's voice was clear, professional. Mr. Carter had advanced arthritis in both hands, severe. He had difficulty with fine motor tasks, opening medication bottles, holding utensils. Signing his name required assistance. The signature on his prescriptions showed significant tremor. Susan pulled up an image of the forged will's signature. Could Mr. Carter have signed this document without assistance? Maria studied it, shook her head firmly. No, that signature is too steady, too controlled. Mr. Carter's hands shook. This doesn't show that. Susan thanked her, asked one more question. Did Mr. Carter ever mention changing his will or leaving his estate to anyone other than his sister? Maria's answer was immediate. Never. He talked about his sister Maggie constantly, said she was the only family that mattered, said he'd made sure everything would go to her. The video conference ended. Susan turned to the table. Second witness, Tom Bradley, Mr. Carter's financial advisor for 20 years. Tom entered from a side door, had been waiting. He sat in the witness chair. Patricia administered the affirmation. Susan walked him through it. Mr. Bradley, you managed Robert Carter's investment accounts? Tom nodded. Yes, for 20 years, every account, about $800,000 total when he died. Susan pulled out bank statements. In November 2023, when the alleged new will was supposedly executed, were there any payments to the law firm listed on that document? Tom was firm. No legal fees at all during that period, Susan continued. And the beneficiary designations on Mr. Carter's investment accounts, when were they last updated? Tom pulled out his own papers. 2015, they list Margaret Carter as primary beneficiary. Mr. Carter never asked me to change them. Susan leaned forward. If he'd truly wanted to disinherit his sister and leave everything to Ms. Patterson and Mr. Patterson, wouldn't he have updated those beneficiary designations? Tom nodded. Absolutely. Robert was meticulous about paperwork. If he'd changed his will, he would have changed the accounts too. Susan had one more thing. Mr. Bradley, tell us about the power of attorney incident. Tom's expression darkened. 3 months before Robert died, Ms. Patterson came to my office, had paperwork claiming power of attorney over his accounts, wanted immediate access. Lisa's face went pale. Tom continued. I refused, told her I needed direct confirmation from Robert. Called him that afternoon. He was confused, said he'd authorized no such thing. I flagged it as a possible fraud attempt, made detailed notes. Susan submitted those notes as evidence. Patricia studied them carefully. The room was silent except for the sound of her typing. Susan stood again. Addressed the room. Let me summarize. The will presented by Ms. Patterson and Mr. Patterson has a forged signature, an invalid notary stamp, references property that didn't exist, shows no corresponding payment to the law firm that allegedly prepared it, contradicts the beneficiary designations Robert maintained until his death, and Ms. Patterson attempted to fraudulently access Robert's accounts before he died using a fake power of attorney. She paused. Let it sink in. Margaret Carter, meanwhile, has the original will, properly executed, properly witnessed, properly notarized, dated 8 years ago when Robert was healthy and clear-minded, supported by testimony from medical professionals and financial advisors, supported by documentary evidence, supported by the facts. Patricia turned to Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, would your clients like to respond? Reynolds whispered with Lisa and David for a long moment. Lisa shook her head several times. David looked miserable. Finally, Reynolds straightened. We'd like to request a brief recess to confer with our clients. Patricia checked her watch. 15 minutes. They left the conference room. Susan and I stayed. She poured water from a pitcher on the side table, handed me a glass. They're going to settle. They have to. I sipped the water. My hands were steadier than I expected. 3 months of preparation, all those phone calls, all that evidence. It was all here on this table. The truth. 15 minutes later, they returned. Reynolds looked defeated. My clients would like to discuss settlement terms. Patricia nodded. Susan sat forward. Full withdrawal of their will. All assets distributed according to Robert Carter's original will dated 8 years ago. Ms. Patterson and Mr. Patterson to return any items already removed from the property. Payment of Mrs. Carter's legal fees. Signed agreement of no further claims on the estate. Reynolds consulted with Lisa and David again. More whispering. Then Lisa spoke for the first time. Her voice was small, broken. He was dying. I was desperate. She looked at me, really looked at me. The divorce left me with $80,000 in debt. I was facing bankruptcy. I thought, he had so much money. I thought he wouldn't miss it. Her voice cracked. I know it was wrong. I knew it when I did it, but I couldn't stop. David put his head in his hands. I didn't know about the forgery. I swear. I thought she'd convinced him. I needed money for my kids' tuition. I rationalized it. He looked up at me finally. I'm sorry, Margaret. I'm truly sorry. I sat there, looking at them. Lisa crying quietly. David's face full of shame. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired and sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that Robert's final months had been manipulated. Sad that people he'd cared about, however distantly, had done this. When the mediator asked if I accepted the settlement, I didn't hesitate. Yes. Not because I forgave them, not because I understood, but because it was over. Because Robert's actual wishes would be honored. Because the truth had won. Patricia typed the settlement terms, printed copies. We all signed. Lisa's hand shook as she wrote her name. David signed quickly. Wouldn't look at anyone. Reynolds collected his papers. They left first. Didn't say goodbye. Susan packed up her briefcase, smiled at me. You did it, Margaret. I picked up the original will from the table. Robert's signature clear and firm at the bottom. His actual wishes, protected, honored. We did it, I corrected. We walked out together. In the elevator going down, I touched the will through the folder. Thought about Robert, about Tuesday dinners and Thanksgiving toasts and yellow roses, about 42 years of being chosen, of choosing each other. When the mediator had read the settlement terms, when Lisa had admitted what she'd done, I hadn't felt the triumph I'd expected, just relief and a deep, settled sadness, but also certainty. I'd done right by Robert, protected what he'd built, honored his memory. That had to be enough. 2 weeks after the settlement, Eleanor helped me sort through Robert's belongings at his house. The estate was officially mine now. Paperwork filed, deed transferred, bank accounts in my name. But the house still felt like his. We worked in the study, packing books, organizing papers. Eleanor had been quieter than usual all morning. Finally, she spoke. "Maggie, I need to say something. I've been feeling guilty for months, watching Lisa come and go, seeing them take things. I should have said something sooner, should have called you." I stopped folding a box, looked at her. "Eleanor, you came forward when it mattered. That's what counts." She shook her head. I was scared to cause trouble, scared to make accusations. That's not being a good friend. I crossed the room, put my hand on her shoulder. "You testified. You wrote down what you saw. You stood up for Robert and for me. That took courage." Her eyes filled. "I just wish I'd been braver earlier." I squeezed her shoulder. "You were brave when I needed you. That's enough." We went back to packing, but the weight between us had lifted. She'd needed to say it. I'd needed to hear it. Now we could move forward. 3 days later, I met Susan for coffee at the cafe near her office. She'd sent the final bill. I'd expected it to be astronomical. It wasn't. "Susan, this can't be right. 3 months of work, all those hours. This is half what I expected." Susan stirred her latte. Didn't meet my eyes. "I reduced my fees significantly." I frowned. "Why?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, 5 years ago, my mother went through something similar. My brother tried to manipulate her estate while she was declining with dementia. I didn't know elder law then, didn't know how to help her legally. I watched it happen and felt helpless. She looked up. "I specialized in elder law because of her. Cases like yours. This is why I do this work. You reminded me of my mother, strong, determined, deserving of protection." She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo, an elderly woman at a family dinner, smiling. She passed 2 years ago, but I won her case, protected her wishes, like we protected Robert's. I felt my throat tighten. "Susan, I want to pay you full price. You earned it." She shook her head firmly. "You've given me more than money could. You reminded me why this matters." We finished our coffee, hugged goodbye. Our relationship had become something more than attorney and client. It was real friendship, built on shared purpose. Tom called that afternoon, asked me to come to his office to finalize the account transfers, Robert's investments, his savings, everything. Tom had all the paperwork ready, professional as always. We signed document after document. He explained each one carefully. When we finished, he pulled up a file on his computer. "Margaret, I want to show you something. 2 years ago, Robert left a note in his file. I kept it because..." He trailed off, turned the screen. A scanned, handwritten note. Robert's handwriting. Clear. Unmistakable. Note to self. Maggie is beneficiary. She's family. Lisa is not. Make sure this is clear. If anything happens to me, Maggie needs to know my actual wishes. She's the one who was there. R. I stared at that note, touched the screen. Robert had known, had documented it, had protected it. Tom's voice was soft. "I'm glad you won, Margaret. He'd be proud." I nodded. Couldn't speak. Tom printed a copy of the note for me. I folded it carefully, put it in my purse. Another piece of Robert. Another proof that I'd been chosen. The estate settlement included financial restitution, $800,000 transferred to my accounts. The house became legally mine. Robert's car, his personal belongings, everything he'd worked for his entire life. Lisa and David returned the items they'd taken. The brass lamp, the reading chair, boxes of books. They didn't bring them personally, hired movers. I didn't see them, didn't need to. The no-contact agreement was in place, legally binding. They couldn't approach me, couldn't contact me, couldn't make any further claims. My attorney had made sure of that. If they violated it, they'd face contempt charges. It was protection I needed, peace I'd earned. I met with Susan again to establish the scholarship fund. Robert's legacy needed to be more than just money in my account. It needed to mean something. Robert J. Carter Memorial Scholarship for Healthcare Studies. We set up a trust, funded it with $100,000 from the estate. Tom agreed to manage the investments. Susan handled the legal structure. The scholarship would award $5,000 annually to a community college student pursuing nursing or healthcare. Robert's cancer experience had taught him the value of compassionate care. This felt right. The first recipient was announced in March, a young woman named Jennifer, 23 years old, single mother, working 2 jobs while studying to be a registered nurse. When we told her she'd won, she cried, said it would change her life. The scholarship ceremony was small, held at the community college. 20 people attended, Robert's friends, my book club, Susan, Tom, Eleanor. We displayed photos of Robert. The Thanksgiving picture was there. Him and me, smiling, chosen family. I spoke briefly, kept it simple. Robert believed in helping people. This scholarship honors that. He'd be proud to support students like Jennifer. After the ceremony, people shared stories about Robert, his generosity, his kindness, his terrible jokes. It felt good, felt like he was there, being remembered properly. 2 days later, I went to the cemetery, brought yellow roses, Robert's favorite. I'd had them planted at his grave the week after the settlement, a whole rose bush. The groundskeeper said they'd bloom in spring. For now, they were just branches, but they were there, growing. I knelt down, placed the Thanksgiving photo in a weatherproof frame at the headstone, protected it so it wouldn't fade. Robert and me, his arm around me, both smiling. "We did it, Bobby," I said quietly. "Your wishes are safe. Everything you wanted. The scholarship launched. Your friends remember you. I'm okay." The cemetery was quiet. Cold February wind, but it felt peaceful. "I miss you. Miss our Tuesday dinners. Miss your terrible jokes. Miss having you around." I touched the headstone, but I did right by you. Protected what you built. That's what matters. That evening, an envelope arrived, hand-delivered. No return address. Inside was a letter, David's handwriting. I recognized it from documents at the hearing. I sat at my kitchen table, opened it carefully. "Margaret, I know I have no right to contact you. I know the no-contact agreement. This isn't a legal document, just a letter I needed to write. I'm sorry, I let Lisa convince me that Robert wanted this. I needed money for my kids' college tuition. I rationalized it, told myself it was okay. I was wrong. I should have questioned her, should have verified, should have called you. I didn't. That's on me. I'm seeing a therapist now, working through why I went along with it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. I see what I did now. I'm ashamed. David." I read it twice, folded it, put it in a drawer with the legal documents. Didn't need to respond, didn't need to absolve him. His guilt was his to carry, but I acknowledged it. The letter meant he understood. That was enough. I redistributed the photo albums from Robert's house, kept the originals, made copies for his friends who wanted them, the golf club buddies, his neighbors, people who'd known him, wanted to remember him. The Thanksgiving photo stayed on my mantle, his coffee mug on my kitchen shelf, visible, but not a shrine. Just reminders that he'd been real, that our bond had mattered. Every Tuesday morning, I still made 2 eggs over easy and wheat toast, still set 2 places at the table, caught myself doing it, smiled instead of crying now. Robert was gone, but he wasn't erased. Lisa and David had tried to erase him, tried to rewrite his story, make it seem like he'd chosen them. I'd stopped that, protected his truth. That's what family does, real family, the kind you choose. 6 months after the settlement, I went back to Robert's house one final time before the sale closed. I'd decided not to live there. Too many memories, the wrong kind, the kind that would keep me looking backward instead of forward. A young family had made an offer. 2 kids, a dog. They loved the backyard. The rose garden Robert had never quite mastered. I told them about him, about his terrible tomatoes, his pride in those stubborn rose bushes. They promised to maintain the garden. That mattered. I walked through empty rooms, kitchen where we'd had Tuesday dinners for decades, living room where we'd watched game shows and argued about answers, his study where I'd sat at his desk and realized I had to fight. Each room held a lifetime, but it was time to let go. The scholarship fund was launched. First recipient doing well in her nursing program. Second recipient just announced. Robert's estate, his life's work, now helping others pursue healthcare careers. He loved that. His cancer struggle transformed into opportunity for someone else. That's legacy, not houses or bank accounts, impact that continues after you're gone. I locked the door for the last time, drove to the cemetery. Yellow roses blooming at his grave now. Spring had come. The rose bush was thriving. I sat on the bench nearby, looked at the Thanksgiving photo in its weatherproof frame. Still there, still clear. Robert's smile, my smile. Chosen family. The house sold, Bobby. New family moving in. Kids will play in your yard. Your roses will keep blooming. I touched the headstone. I'm okay, not great every day, but okay. Your wishes are safe. Your memory is honored. That's what matters. My life now is different, but full. I'm still in my own home. The split level Tom and I bought 40 years ago. Robert's inheritance secured my retirement. No financial worries. I'm careful with it. Invested most. Used some for travel. That Alaska cruise Robert and I always talked about? Booked for next summer. Eleanor's coming with me. We've become closer through all this. More than neighbors. Real friends. The kind who show up. Who stay. Tuesday mornings she comes over. We have coffee. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we just sit. That's friendship. Book club continues. Monthly meetings. My turn to host next week. The women who supported me through the legal battle are still here. Still bringing casseroles. Still asking how I'm doing. Not because they have to, because they want to. That's community. The real kind. Small. Intimate. Chosen. Thursday afternoons, I volunteer at the community college, help students with their scholarship applications, make sure they know about the Robert J. Carter Fund. I meet kids like Jennifer, working hard, juggling jobs and school, trying to build better lives. I see Robert in them, his determination, his belief that education opens doors. When I hand them the scholarship information, I'm handing them a piece of him. Lisa and David? I don't think about them much anymore. The no contact order stands. I haven't seen them, haven't heard from them. David's letter is still in that drawer with the legal documents. I don't read it. Don't need to. That chapter is closed. Some relationships need endings. Some betrayals don't deserve reconciliation. I learned that. Family loyalty doesn't mean accepting manipulation. Love doesn't mean allowing theft. You can walk away from people who hurt you, even family, especially family who prove they were never really family at all. I've learned something through this. Grief makes you vulnerable. And people notice vulnerability. Some people offer support. Others see opportunity. You have to protect yourself even while you're broken, even when you're mourning, even when you just want to collapse. I also learned that quiet strength matters more than loud declarations. I didn't yell, didn't make scenes, didn't post on social media about the injustice. I gathered evidence, hired professionals, followed legal process, measured approach, but effective. Sometimes the quietest battles are the most important ones. If you're listening to this and you have aging parents, siblings, loved ones, make sure their wishes are documented properly. Real estate attorney, not online templates. witnesses who aren't beneficiaries, notary in good standing, multiple copies in safe places. Talk to them about their wishes. It's not a comfortable conversation, but it's necessary. Trust, but verify. If something feels wrong about a will, about how family is acting, trust that instinct. Get legal advice early. Don't wait. Don't let people gaslight you into thinking you're imagining things. Evidence doesn't lie. And don't let anyone tell you that fighting for someone's actual wishes is disrespectful or greedy. Protecting someone's legacy is an act of love, especially when they can't protect it themselves. Some days, I walk through my house and still expect to hear Robert's voice. "Hey, Maggie, coffee ready?" But I know I did right by him. Protected his wishes, honored his memory, made sure his generosity continues through that scholarship. That's what matters. He'd be proud. I'm proud. Not of winning. Proud of not giving up. Proud of choosing truth over peace. Proud of being the sister he trusted me to be. This Tuesday morning, like every Tuesday morning, I made 2 eggs over easy. Wheat toast, set 2 places at the table, Robert's place and mine. I catch myself doing it. Don't stop anymore. It's ritual now. My way of keeping him close. His coffee mug is on my shelf. His Thanksgiving photo on my mantle. He's here, just different. Changed form, but here. And that's enough.